Be in good mood today. I am Javeria, and I'm one of the organizers of the UiPath Lunch chapter alongside Christina and Arjun. Um, I have 7 years of total experience with more than 4 years of experience in automation now. That's all about me. I pass the stage to Arjun.
Good afternoon, all, and good evening if you're joining from a different time zone. I don't know which region of UK is Juveria in because it's gloomy here, so the weather is not nice. So, uh,
Oh,
anyways, yeah, my name is Arjun, and I'm working on in the London chapter alongside Christina and Juveria. I've got around 5 years of experience in RPA, and really looking forward to this session because I think this is one of the critical talks which we do in most of our RPA journeys when we go through, when we go through implementing RPA in an organization. So I'm really looking forward to Eric's session. And what we would like to start with first is just a well-being check. So that how's everybody doing? And if everybody does not mind, if they can bring up their laptop or their mobile phone and log in into this URL and just answer a question that how do we feel today? I think there are multiple entries to do that. And yeah, you can put forward your views. Once everybody joins, then I'll share the other screen to see the responses. I've already got a response. Great, fantastic. Okay. So I'll share my other screen.
Arjun, you're speaking on mute, but I do like the answer midweek blues. I think starting Monday until now, I haven't get out of that blue zone.
I don't know what happened there when I shared screen. It disabled my audio. Okay, anyways, moving on. We'll hand over to Eric. He's the man of the hour, and I'll let him introduce himself and we'll take it forward from there.
All right. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can, Eric.
Let me make sure that I share the sound because I have a video clip for you to show as well later. All right, and you can see my presentation too.
Yes, we can now. Yeah.
Just trying to get to full screen share. All right, welcome everybody. I'm happy to see so many people interested in this topic. Yeah, we're talking today a little bit less of a technical topic, what you would often see in community meetings, but more of a, I like to call it a business topic. Think before you automate. And maybe just a few quick words for myself. I am originally from the Netherlands. Have been working for 25 years in corporate roles, the last one being the head of RPA for the company that produces Oakley and Ray-Ban. And since 3.5 years, I run Boundaryless, which is a UiPath partner. I don't want to say too much, but like other than we do a lot with and for the community too. So we have several employees who work for us. So several MVPs who work for us, and some of them are chapter leads, and we really enjoy sharing and working with the community. So thank you very much for inviting me to present here. And what I wanted to do today is a 1-hour introduction process analysis and process improvement. And Juveria and I worked very intensely to develop an interactive approach. So hopefully you appreciate that. So you won't hear me all the time. We also have a little video in between to also break that further up. And you see the structure here, but it's really helping you think about how can we actually identify process improvement opportunities and how do we deal with those. And I'd like to start with a few quotes. The first one is actually from a gentleman by the name of Bill Gates, who basically says, hey, if you automate an efficient process, great. But if you automate an inefficient process, not so great. The second one speaks for itself. There's probably a bit more London slang. And the third one is something I often talk about. I have a background in process improvement. I've been the head of process improvement for one of for the biggest Swiss bank. And the people that do process improvement often are a little bit hesitant working with technology. And I think if you don't think about automation tools that we have nowadays, you're missing a trick. But vice versa, if you're automating the process as it's being run today, without thinking if there's a smarter way to run that process, and if you would only automate, you're also missing a trick. So that's what basically the key message is: don't miss a trick today. And as you go through your automation path, you'll find something. Most organizations have something similar to this, right? We have an idea, then we do, and also if you've done the UiPath Business Analyst Foundations, you've seen this. We do a high-level assessment, then we do a detailed assessment. So is it technically feasible? And then, what should that future process, that process we're going to build, what should it look like? And that's where I encourage you to spend a little bit of time thinking. And as I promised, I have some tools, but just a very quick introduction to some theory. So there's a theory called Lean, which was popularized by a company called Toyota, which was all about how do we make processes more efficient. And the way they defined that, and it's probably the only thing you wanna remember from this page, is if I would draw a process map, which of the steps in that process map does the client actually care about, right? And everything else is probably not value added, at least from a client's perspective. Of course, we have certain quality controls we may want to put in place, but the client is only willing to pay for what actually the transformations and the activities that you deliver. So thinking about that client and what does the client really need from this process is the key question. And Lean, as you see in the big red, eliminate waste, and you see the word waste on the page as well. So what is waste, right? And we have identified, or it's commonly referred to as 8 types of wastes. And if you look at the first character of every word, it would actually spell the word downtime, defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, down, and then second line is time. So it's a way to remember. And just to I don't want to waste too much time in reading slides, but it is just to quickly explain defects, what goes wrong, overproduction. I need to produce 10, but I actually produce 20. That's overproduction. Waiting time speaks for itself. Now, non-utilized talent is very key in the modern world of RPA developers. Am I doing something that's not really what I studied for, or that's not really what I came here for? So if you're a finance person, you need to do a lot of data corrections. That's not what you studied finance for. Or if you're a developer and all you do is typing over data, that's not what you studied IT for. So a large part of what we see in service roles is often that people are doing work where there are smarter solutions, as you will all know. Now, transport is moving things, whereas you see motion, which is actually the movement of people. So just to put those next to each other. Inventory is something waiting. And excessive processing, an English word for that is also gold plating, is doing too much, making it too nice, making it perfect, whereas maybe not quite perfect would suffice. Just a quick sound check. Everything okay? I'm audible. I don't know if anybody can say yes. I see.
Yes.
Yes,
It's fine.
well hearable.
So some examples of these downtime types of waste. And again, I'm not going to read every slide in intricate detail. I hope that the team will share these slides so you can read it through. But if you, for instance, look at overproduction, right? Like an example of a project we have done in the Netherlands is where we worked with a company that manages fleets of cars. And when they got a new contract with 600 cars, somebody was actually going into a web form and entering all the information car by car by car. And then they had to say, well, my name is Eric and I live here and I work there. And next form, and the administrator had always to provide their own information. So when you automate that, of course, the robot can do the same thing 600 times and implement and enter data in that web form. But the smarter solution is here probably to be aware that this is not a very efficient way. Maybe there's a way to access the database that's behind that form directly and make the process smarter. Right? And that's, I'm sure that's the thought you have. We're just trying to give you a little bit more structure around it. As I said, non-utilized talent, like as I said, cleaning data that is really not what you should be doing, or entering data in different systems, which is probably excessive processing. But those are activities that you see very commonly in large organizations. And those are the ones where we think that there must be smarter ways to do that, right? And RPA is obviously a solution there. But one thing I wanted to share with you, and this is also the introduction to the video, is figuring out if we see a problem in the process, right? Why is that a problem? What's causing that? And quite often, it's not so easy that I see a problem, this is the solution. It's sometimes you need to force yourself to be like a child and ask why a few times. 5 times why is the name of an official tool. And I give you one example from a hotel, so everybody can relate to that. Room service complaints come in from all kinds of guests because the food arrives cold. So as a natural instinct, hey, why does it take so long to bring the food? And there's probably the person that's bringing it is probably at fault, right? That's maybe a human conclusion. And this is where 5 times why would actually help, because why is the food cold? Well, there's a long waiting time. But why is there a long waiting time? Well, the elevator was in use. Interesting. But why was the elevator in use? Well, we had to run extra laundry runs. So the housekeeping department was using the elevator all the time. Why? Well, because they didn't have the detergent they needed to run all the laundry. Why was that? Well, we forgot to reorder in time. So the root cause, as they call it, for your cold food is nothing to do with that person bringing the food. It's actually somebody in the procurement team forgot to order laundry detergent. It's a simple example, but it showcases that sometimes you need to dig a little deeper and have a nice video. We are in Europe, and this is an example from the US. But it is the the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, which has this problem about it needs to be repainted all the time because of all this cleaning that's going on. And maybe you're interested as well, what's happening there. So allow me to show you that video. And just if somebody could quickly confirm you can actually hear it.
Years ago, the stone exterior was deteriorating at the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., a popular monument in the United States. Repairing the stone or painting over the worn areas was too expensive. So park rangers turned to root cause analysis and started asking why.
Why was the stone deteriorating?
High-powered sprayers were being used to wash the memorial every 2 weeks.
Eric,
Why
I
would-
don't know if there's a video, but it is audio playing, but not the video. I think you're sharing your presentation only.
Oh, okay. Let's do this again.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to stop share and reshare. Give me one.
Yeah.
Okay. We go again. Sorry for that.
No worries.
Let me see if I can start this again. It's more fun. It's more fun with the video, of course. Here we go.
Years ago, the stone exterior was deteriorating at the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., a popular monument in the United States. Repairing the stone or painting over the worn areas was too expensive, so park rangers turned to root cause analysis and started asking why.
Why was the stone deteriorating?
High-powered sprayers were being used to wash the memorial every 2 weeks.
Why were high-powered washings needed every 2 weeks?
Because of bird droppings.
Asking why stopped because it seemed the cause was found. Workers put nets around the building, but they were unsightly, and the birds found ways around them. So it was back to the drawing board, or the 5 whys.
Why are there so many birds?
They come to feed on spiders.
Why are there so many spiders?
They feed on insects at night.
Why are there so many insects?
They're attracted by lights that shine on the memorial at night.
With a new cause found, questions stopped, and a plan was created to reduce the amount of time the memorial spent in the spotlight at night, and it worked. The insects were reduced by 90%, and with the root cause removed, the excessive cleaning was no longer needed. An unexpected benefit was a cost savings realized by using less electricity. This highlights how root cause analysis can involve trial and error, and how the 5 whys isn't always limited to exactly 5 questions. Read more about root cause analysis and the Jefferson Memorial story at the link below.
All right.
So previously.
So I hope I'm back. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. The so we spoke a little bit about identifying like waste in a process, and then trying to understand, you know, what's the root cause for that. And once you know that, of course, once you know what causes the problem, like the lights here that attract these bugs, that attracts the birds, that make the birds poo, and then there's spiders in between, and then having to repaint that building all the time. Now we know, like, it's the light that's the problem. So we can do something about that light, right? Now in an office environment, you also find root causes for problems, and then how do I go about making improvements? And we have a simple tool we call ECRS: eliminate, combine, rearrange, and simplify. So the first question is, should we do this in the first place? Yes or no, right? And sometimes, like, we've seen examples of companies have reports, and some of these reports are just not needed. So why automate a report that nobody uses, right? And then there's also like things you can do about the process activities. Can we actually combine steps in a process together so it can be performed better? Especially also in an RPA environment, like the robot can of course do a few things right after each other in either a simple step, or the other question is sometimes, is there a smarter way to go about how we run this process? Is there a smarter sequence? Would it make sense if we run this in the middle of the night instead of real time, or vice versa? Would it make sense if we do this in real time instead of once a day? And so those are always good questions to ask. And then last but not least, simplify. Can we standardize? Can you create standard templates? Can you create standard forms? Like that's how companies like in a way McDonald's are very successful, by making everything like very straightforward, standardized. Now, again, examples, and I don't want to read the whole slide, but maybe some examples of some recent projects. So we've been working with a US state government on employee onboarding, and they were asking 93 questions about a new joiner. And you go like, 93 questions is really a lot, right? I could not even come up with 93 questions, right? What do I really need to know for an employee to start? And so in the end, we ended up with like something closer to 26, or if I remember well, questions instead of 93, which is of course a massive improvement if you have to process that. Even manually, there would be a lot of change, but you can imagine filling out the form, processing the form. And another example, talk about simplify, is of course, you can fill out a PDF form and use document understanding to extract information, but why not use a web form, right? You don't need document understanding if you can have people enter the information on a web form. And it's those simple ideas, you may think, that actually make processes often a lot better. So it's asking yourself these simple questions that we've been sharing with you here, to identify waste and then find ways to work around it and make the process better and better ultimately for the people performing the process and the people that are receiving the service. Because if you can imagine these onboarding forms with 93 questions, I can tell you that it took about 2 to 3 months to onboard an employee, because there were so many things that needed to be checked and followed up on. So ultimately, employees who are the clients of that process also benefit from a simplified process. Now, this is where we're going to make it interactive. This is still like part of the readout to you, but this is a real recruitment process that I came across in an RPA project, which was very paper-based. So as you can read, the candidate applies, sends an email, then the HR team prints those emails, and then they start to match that to the open roles. You can read through the rest of the process. You see that they evaluate the candidates, then they send that to the hiring manager, who also prints this document, by the way. And then he or she looks at the applications. Which one do we invite? What interview times do we have? And if the candidate is not a fit, then we send a rejection email. Then, of course, we need to schedule the interviews. And ultimately, we conduct interviews and we provide feedback to the candidates. And hopefully we find a few good candidates that we want to hire. And then there's also, we need to reimburse expenses for the candidates. And as you probably read between the lines, this is a bit of a paper factory, right? We're printing copies here and there. So this is where as I switch over to Uveria to do a little bit of practice with you on these types of wastes that we spoke about. And if you can identify what waste is applicable here in this process. So
thank you, Eric. And this is very exciting. So Eric and we came up with a set of 5 questions that I'm going to present. And I want all of you to take out your phone again, log into Mentimeter, and I'll show you the code. So the code to Menti is 12863946. I'll place the code in the chat as well. So I'll wait for, say, a minute, that's it, and then we'll start. I find this first page of Menti very interesting with all the icons coming up. All right, let's start with the quiz and the disclaimer we have. So the winners will also get a voucher from UiPath. So give your best shot. Let's start.
are you sharing the quiz, Uveria?
Yes, can you see my screen?
On my side, it's really small, but it may be me. Yeah.
Can anyone else?
I got it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, John Doe applies for jobs via a website and also emails resume to the HR of the company. How do you fit this in Downtime? You've got 34 seconds to answer. Beautiful. So 11 of us has answered correctly. Let's see the leaderboard. Question number 2. HR proceeds to enter Jane Doe's information in the company database. Typos are being made. Classify this into Downtime. That's right, defect and non-utilized talent. Let's move on to the next question. That's question number 3. The HR prints 3 copies of the resume and matches it to the open role in the organization. Classify this into Downtime. This question is very interesting and tricky. I hope, Eric, you're not answering the questions. That's right, overproduction and excessive processing. Let's move on to our second last question. That is, the HR decides to go and pick the printed resume. Do you think it can be classified into Downtime? Yes, for sure, but which one? Apologies for this. Let me load the presentation again. Yes, motion and transport. I believe I was in trial to get like from one point to other just to get the printouts. Well, yeah, that's the right answer, motion and transport. Let's move on to our last question. HR emails candidate CVs to hiring manager for review. Classify this into downtime. Imagine reading hundreds of resumes every day. Inventory and waiting time. Let's see who is the winner. Congratulations, Manjot. You are the winner, and we'll be sending you a voucher in an email. Before we move forward, Eric, we have one more chapter lead between us, Graham Bays, today in the call. He is a chapter lead for Edinburgh and Glasgow chapters, and I would like to give him the stage for a moment to introduce himself and the chapter as well.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. I really enjoyed that presentation, by the way, Eric. I joined specially when I saw it advertised, and yeah, it was as good as I was anticipating. Appreciate it. So we're starting a new chapter in Scotland, which is the Scotland Central Belt chapter. It runs really from Edinburgh to Glasgow, so across the middle of the country. We have our first event on the 13th of September, about 5:30 p.m. in UK time. And we have we have a developer subject that we're going to be covering. If I can just remind myself of the title, which is leveraging UiPath.net integration to build JSON in a simple, readable, and easily followed way. It's something that UiPath developers work with all the time, with creating JSON, also querying JSON. And we've got a developer who's created an interesting way, rather than just using UiPath activities, standard activities, but using .NET integration. And it really saves a load of time. And if somebody else has to follow your work later, it's much, much easier to follow as well. So anybody who's interested in that would be more than welcome to join. There's a link there in the chat to the new chapter. The first session is going to be on Zoom, like this one. It's also going to be, there will be a session in Glasgow as well. So people that are in that area will be welcome to come and join our Zoom connection, and we'll join the meeting together. So thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce myself. Also, feel free to connect to me in LinkedIn as well.
Thank you, Graham. If you could just pop the link, your LinkedIn profile link in the chat for everyone, that would be great. And I can't wait to attend this session. JSON is quite easy to use. And yes, I've used it both with the activity and with the code. I think it would be very interesting. Over to you, Eric.
Now I'm off mute. Thank you very much, Juveria and Graham. Also, thank you very much for the unsolicited feedback. Happy to hear. I'm trying to share my screen again. I hope that worked.
Totally.
Totally good. The Manoj, sorry, Mayot, congratulations on winning. And what I want to do is quickly run the answers. But what is more important probably than winning the quiz is, I think everybody sort of started to think about that recruitment processes. Like something in this step is not right. It's not efficient, right? Printing 3 copies is not necessarily yeah, like sounds like a lot of paper, right? And so we mapped, and of course when you did the questions, we had the printing the copies and the manual match we combined it in questions. So, but if you look at a process flow like this and you start to ask yourself the question, where do I have waiting times? Where do I have opportunities for that something goes wrong, right? Those are the questions you should be asking yourself. And which is what we did when we went through that process. And then in the end, we built an online tool where you can actually match a candidate to a job, and you can even reassign a candidate to another open position, because that sometimes happens, right? We think, hey, this person applied for this role, but may be a better fit for another manager. So in red, what we stopped doing; in blue, what we changed with the help of automation. And as you can imagine, this is a little bit of RPA and a little bit of workflow, but it shows you that we actually ask the questions about a paper-based recruitment process, and we turn it into an automated recruitment process, and everybody's happy. And the good thing in terms of client feedback for me is I got a message from the HR director, said, Eric, thank you very much, because now finally my people are done with that paper process and they can actually start doing what we hired them to do, is being an HR manager. And this goes back to this non-utilized talent, right? If you, and I'm sure you all see this in your daily work, if you find a way to do a process better, people have more time to add value, to add that human component that we're good in, rather than shuffling paper around as in this particular process. So hopefully you found it educational, and I am happy that we have some more time for questions or maybe some other updates from the London chapter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. And I think we've done this session before, and I've been, it was so helpful for me when I started my consultant journey, just to go through these slides back again and then start with my work. So thank you for sharing your insights. The floor is open for questions, any open discussion. Ask a lot of questions to Eric. He has a lot of experience in this field. So shoot, go ahead. And if not, I think, Eric, we've done a very good job in conveying the message.
Nobody dares to ask a question. Dylan, I'm sure you have a question.
Do you know what? I knew you were going to pick on me. Okay, so it's interesting, you know, because a lot of this, as you said at the top end, right, is outside of some of the more technical stuff that we're used to, maybe in the chapter and stuff like that, you know. And it may be going beyond sometimes what we're comfortable with in terms of you know, the discussions that we're having with the clients and how their processes are changing and stuff like that. Inevitably, I think maybe that means that some challenges come down the line, does it, in terms of the sort of change aspect of this kind of process improvement, which works into kind of the people piece, I guess, of RPA and of digital transformation. What's your advice on how to go about, you know, those conversations and actually widening maybe the scope of what you would usually do in, you know, traditional RPA piece? Yeah.
Well, one thing I know the question is about the client conversation, but one thing in what we do is like when you do the UiPath Academy, of course you have your RPA Foundations developer training, and there's also the RPA Foundations analyst training, and we actually have our team always go through the analyst training first, because we think it's important that you also have that mindset. And it rarely, honestly, if you see that there's a better way, I find it most clients are open to that, saying like, listen, I look at the process and I think we can do it smarter. Would you be willing? And you can always offer suggestions. You can always, and ideally asking it as a question, like would you be willing to hear some ideas I have? Like it hardly happens that somebody says, no, I just automate what we do today. That hardly happens. If you, it's all about client management, and often the best way is not to say or to do, it can be done better, we're going to do it. It's asking the question, hey, would it make sense to do this maybe with an API? Would it make sense to would it be a smarter idea to access the database, because we think we can actually win a lot of time doing that. And by asking it as a question, you don't make it fair, you make it less threatening. That's my off the cuff advice, Dylan.
Yeah, no, that's good. I often think people get defensive a little bit about their processes and stuff like that. So that slightly softer approach is good.
Yeah, it is tough, right? And I can give you, like, from 25 years of career, I can give you a lot of experience where we knew what the better solution was, and people didn't want to do it too, right? People are people, right? And we're getting into the topic of change management too here, but yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you.
I think.
Yeah, I have a second question, Eric. I've also seen that people took this approach of optimizing processes and ESOAR, as we also call it, a bit too far. And for example, where they said, okay, we have 3 geographies, we have Asia, we have Europe, we have America. First, we're gonna standardize all those processes, and then we're gonna build one robot to rule them all, right? And there we've also seen that sometimes the build and burn approach works a bit better because otherwise it just takes four years to harmonize this, right? So I mean, is this something you've also seen where these kind of things like de-accelerated the program? And what do you think is the optimal the best of both breeds?
Yeah, no, you're right. So the question is the question that you're asking rephrased is, do I fix first or do I automate first? Very simply said. And the answer, and there are like in each camp there are fundamentalists, right? It's you cannot always win the discussion, but the real answer is it depends. If you do a business case, like I have been on the receiving end of consultants say, let's automate first and then we'll fix it later. You can do a mathematical calculation when one is better than the other, and yeah, long story short, it's roughly the cutoff is if you have a benefit of the equivalent of around 2 FTEs in Western Europe. If you have more than that, it actually makes sense to automate first and fix later, because you gain so much savings that it's worth sort of the extended project time. Whereas if the benefit is smaller, let's redesign. Let's spend a bit of extra time to redesign the process.
I think I've learned something like automating a bad process will always be a bad automation. What do you say about this? And I know Graham has a question as well, so it goes to Graham after this.
My question was actually covered, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
It was really to do with the trade-off, the traditional RPA approach of only automating mature processes against how radically do you change something and introduce risk and change management, but that's been covered.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we have done, because I think Eric also mentioned the tooling, right? Exchanging an Excel file for a database. I think that's something that I would always advise, because it's rather a small change, also with regards to change management. But with if you talk about process changes, I've taken a step back and moved a bit more towards the automate first camp than the total optimization camp.
I mean, in my experience, I mean, I've seen the opposite, Thomas, to be honest. I mean, there were some processes which, which when we went to optimizing actually saved a lot of benefits for the people also who were doing the process, because just sharing from my personal experience, there were like process maps which were 10 years old, ARIS process maps which were 10 years old, and they haven't been looked into and they haven't been revised. And it was just when we went to document the PDD, etc., then we came to know, okay, no, this is not matching the ARIS map at all. So that's where we came to know that throughout the 10 years, it had been tweaked in such a way, because team leads actually just send the information to the SMEs, or it's the training program changes, but actually they don't see the core where it all started from. So obviously, yes, you're right that there might be some processes which could be optimized, but some processes, yes, automate first and then optimize it later. But yeah, don't miss the key of optimizing it. That would be the key.
Yeah,
Eric,
definitely,
I have a
definitely.
question for you. Do you think leaning out a process and process optimization can be used interchangeably?
Sorry, say that again.
Leaning out a process and process optimization, can I use both the terms interchangeably? Would they mean the same, or for you it has a different meaning?
No, you can use them interchangeably. I think that, again, there's purists in everything, right? But like lean is just one improvement methodology. But like but using it as an English verb makes sense. So you can use it interchangeably. Yes. Yeah.
More as a verb rather than as an approach.
Yes.
Totally. Any other questions or anything else you would like to discuss, guys on the call?
I just posted one just to to spark the debate. Do you think the amount of industry regulation should impact the trade-off between leaning out first, and then I mean totally leaning out, or automating as is?
Oh, so basically what you're asking is, do we fix the process first because of regulation before we automate? Yeah. I don't know. That's almost a conscience question. Like if regulation says you need to follow these rules, like I don't know, Thomas. I don't know if I have the answer, because it sounds like the solution needs to meet certain requirements one way or the other, right? So I think it's almost like, sorry, it's a non-answer, but you should probably do it at the same time. Before you need to implement something that meets regulation. So I don't think it's a fix or automate first question. It's really like, how do we make sure that the design meets the requirements before we go live?
Yeah, it's
maybe somebody has a better answer than I do. But yeah.
Yeah, the idea behind the question is like, I mean, obviously you worked in a highly regulated industry in Switzerland.
Right.
So the idea is like, if there is more industry regulation, it's more difficult to change processes. And for example, if you need 3 or 4 signatures, we've even seen processes that went to the CFO because of SOX regulations, right? So if you have more of these things, you tend to shift towards the camp of automating instead of optimizing. Whether if you have an industry which is less heavily regulated, you have more. It makes more sense to optimize before you automate.
True, but sometimes also regulation or perception of regulation is used as an excuse against change, right? I've been, let's just say, at a large bank, and I worked for a few banks, so so I'm not disclosing which, where they asked me, why does it take 6 months? Like, talk about 5 whys.
Yeah.
Why does it take 6 months to introduce a new mutual fund? And we looked at it and we said, well, one of the reasons is you actually need 12 signatures. Do you really need 12 signatures, right? I can demonstrate that it adds 4 months to your lunchtime. And no, Eric, you cannot sacrifice quality for speed, right? And then sorry, this is maybe I'm preaching against myself, but this is a situation where you cannot win, right? Because people have that perception that 12 signatures is better quality than 4 signatures, yeah. Which is a very arguable or very contestable argument, but if people believe that, it's hard to change.
But I think in this case, phased rollout of automation would make sense. So if it takes time to get 12 signatures, at least have a release one so that you've got your people free and the automation is doing the work. In the meantime, you get your signatures, update your processes. So it would be a continuous development.
Yeah, and to your point, like one of the things you could do there is not do sequential signatures, but do parallel signatures. So that's this rearrangement, right? And have a workflow to keep track of. You can even do a little bit, almost like a bit of a gaming element, like who is the fastest, who's the slowest, right? Yeah. So those are actually ways that do work.
Yeah. And I believe that's why we've got change management and continuous development in the organization.
Yeah, I really like the term perceived regulation. Never heard it before, but I think it says a lot about especially some industries or companies. Yeah, really useful answer. Thank you, Eric.
All right, thank you.
So we've got a question in the chat. How can you measure the time on RPA process development?
How do you measure the time on RPA? Yeah. Well, I don't know if the question is how long does it take to develop an automation? That we do estimate based on we do assessments and we do estimate that based on experience numbers. We have certain amounts of days. We have like essentially light, medium, and heavy projects that we have like a rule of thumb for. But I'm not sure if that's an answer to the question. Yeah. How long does it take measuring it or defining it? I maybe somebody can elaborate. Yeah.
For me, it seems like a very high level question. I would like literally, I've seen complexity calculators in organization based on the number of screens and business rules you've got,
Exactly.
and classify your processes and then define the time. And I believe for every organization, a medium process for one can be a low risk process for the other, and depends on the number of team members you've got. So there's so many factors.
Yeah, but it's there's an element, yeah, of practice makes perfect, right? If you do it more often, you get better at it. But yeah, as I said, there are calculator tools for that, and I even believe that the UiPath Analyst training actually provides those. Yeah.
Yes, I think we could like share the link of that training, or if you guys can like create an account on Academy, that's a very good platform. Go there, create your account, and look for the training on the platform portal itself. It would be really helpful. So any other questions or any other discussion points? We have Eric for 6 more minutes in the call to make the most of it.
You can also talk about what you want to talk about, what you want to present about next time with the chapter. I don't know, we don't have the technology to do a quick poll, but I'm just a guest for the London chapter. Really appreciate being here, but there may be other topics that people find interesting.
I think, Eric, you've been a huge support. I've seen you in the KL chapter supporting me. You've been here, so thank you for that. And for our next session, we've got Studio Web. So we are collaborating with the Paris chapter and Johannesburg chapter, and we are doing launch or very first session on the topic. We are going to talk about event triggers. We are going to talk about automating a process, debugging the process, and all of it. I think it's going to be a good soft launch in terms of community and stuff. Yeah.
Great.
If no questions, I'll give 5 minutes back to Eric and everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us in the call. It was an amazing discussion. I loved it. Thank you. Bye everyone.
I just shared the link to the upcoming event. So in the London chapter, if anyone wants to join. Yeah.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, bye-bye.